Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. An absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Kate, how are you? Okay?
Yes, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So for people who don't know anything about You Are Not My Mother, can you give us a brief introduction? What can they expect if they watch your film?
So You Are Not My Mother is a kind of a coming of age horror movie set on the week of Halloween, and it's about a young girl who lives with her mother and her grandmother, and her mother goes missing, and the family fear the worst, and then she returns, but her behavior becomes increasingly strange after she returns from her day away from the family. So yeah, it basically is about kind of uncovering family secrets with as a kind of a person coming of age, and how to deal with the parent who is slipping away from you, I suppose. And yeah, lots of tension and thrills, and big Halloween climax, which is a lot of fun.
And obviously it's your feature debut. So what was the initial inspiration for the story, but why did you also think this was the right one to go with for your first feature film?
Yeah, I think, as an Irish person, like the kind of folklore always really interested me. And I feel like we have a very rich folk history in Ireland. So, the stories that I heard were always quite dark and sinister. And I think as a horror filmmaker, they just felt like stories I wanted to explore in scripts I was working on. And then it was kind of fortuitous how it came around, actually, You're Not My Mother. I had a rough idea, which was based on this idea about the changeling mythology, but also about like a person coming of age and a parent who's kind of not there, and seeing your parent in that way for the first time. And then Screen Ireland had a scheme called POV, which was for people to make their first feature films as writers, directors. And luckily we got onto that scheme with just the kind of rough idea I had. So it was kind of just kind of lucky that scheme just popped up for me. It was just like at the right time, because I had just done a short film called Catcall. So it was like kind of good timing, and Screen Ireland knew me from doing Catcall. So they were very enthusiastic about the idea. So it was a real expedited development process. So that was towards the end of 2018. So, and then we were shooting by the end of 2020 in November. So it was like quite fast to get from like first idea to script to shooting, which was really kind of, unusual.
And, what I love about the film is it kind of puts in juxtaposition like scenes and places that feel very real and very grounded in reality, from the locations of the house and the streets of kind of suburban Dublin, and then with these kind of very everyday, like striking images, and, the creeping feeling of the supernatural and things of being untoward. So, where did you take your inspirations from? And, some of those symbols and the folklore, did you do a lot of research to kind of, infuse those through your film?
Yeah, I think, the grounded style of the film is something that was really important to me, because I think, I grew up in Dublin, just outside the city. So it was quite an urban environment growing up. And like we used to hang out in the city centre as teenagers and stuff like that. So, it was quite an urban upbringing, but still the folklore and the kind of magical elements of like Irish history were still very prevalent in my upbringing. Like my grandmother's kind of telling me stories and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to see, I suppose, a film that showed like Dublin in a very kind of like grounded way, but then you have these magical elements that bleed into the everyday. And it just, yeah, I love films that kind of are quite grounded, but they bring just like a fantastical element into that world. But yeah, I think, it was just, I can't remember the second part of your question, actually.
Well, yeah, just kind of, the research, but also, did you take inspiration from like other films and kind of the look and feel of your film?
Yeah, well, I did lots of research on the folklore. Like I knew a lot of stuff already because it was something that just interested me. But I did read a lot of extra kind of material in writing the script. So there's a lot of, like there's the black horse which appears in the film, early on, which, you know, in Irish folklore, there's a character called Anpuka, which it can appear as many different shapes and sizes. Like, so it can be a black hare or a dog or a horse or kind of its own form, which is like kind of not really described very much. So that was, you know, just kind of bringing in, yeah, those other parts of folklore that you hadn't really seen, that felt right to just like fit in with the story. But then, yeah, I think like that, as I said, the grounded kind of style, you know, I love films like, you know, The Exorcist was a big reference, because I think in that movie, like, you have obviously the climax, which is what everyone remembers, which is kind of like the puking and head spinning and beds levitating. But I think the first, you know, 3/4 of that movie maybe are like quite grounded and still, and there's actually, you know, everything's very slight, and there's the build of tension in it is really great. So, you know, it just, they really kind of build up that relationship between the mother and daughter early on, and then you kind of you know, bring in the more kind of crazy elements towards the end, so it pays off well. But I think, you know, films like that, like, I also, Candyman was a reference we had because of the kind of urban setting of the folk history in that movie. And yeah, I think that a lot of kind of Asian horror as well. I think they, like, I'm a big fan of Asian horror. I think like the way that they kind of approach things like in Japanese or Korean horror movies is like, the tone is really interesting. Like, they kind of don't rely all the time on plot devices or kind of, you know, the traditional, I suppose, linear storytelling. So it's kind of a bit more setting a feeling and a tone, and then kind of getting that across in what you do. So definitely that was kind of part of it too, because I think in Irish folklore there's a lot of unknowability to everything. So it's like, I wanted to kind of capture that as well, that you can't really explain everything, because in Irish folklore, like, even when I was researching, like, not everything's always explained exactly. You just kind of have to draw your own conclusions to a lot of the stories, which you know, I love about it as well.
And can you tell us a bit about your cast as well? Because obviously you've kind of got these 3 generations of women, and, you know, this really interesting dynamic. But, you know, at the center of it, really, like you say, it's kind of got that coming of age feel following Hazel's character, and she's phenomenal. And, you know, for such a young actress, and you know, really seems to convey, she just kind of wants to have a normal life. You can sort of see that craving in her, and she can't make sense of the world around her. So, you know, talk about the casting, and particularly Hazel.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, on the page when I wrote the script, the producer was kind of concerned. She was like, I don't really know if this character is like coming across. She's very passive, and like, I'm not really getting a sense of her, because she doesn't have a lot of dialogue, and it's never really said how she feels about a lot of the stuff that's happening to her, or like, you know, the things that she's being put through. So I had a very clear idea of what that was, but I think it is hard when you have it in your mind's eye, and then it's like translating that onto page. So we were so happy to get Hazel on board. I had seen her in some short films and feature films before, and I knew she had an ability to give a very internal performance, and, you know, articulate a lot of emotion without saying much at all. And I just knew. So we just brought the script to her and said, do you want to do this? And she said, absolutely. Because she loves kind of witchcraft and paganism and all that kind of stuff. So she was really into the idea. But yeah, it was a hard role for her. I think she was only 18 when we filmed, but she did an amazing job. I think, you know, at times to try and get that character on screen can be really difficult, because you kind of have to really understand exactly how that character's feeling at any moment. So there was we had a lot of conversations, me and Hazel, about all different scenes in the film, and before we even shot anything, and just to make sure she clearly understood like what the kind of feeling was for each scene. But then on the day when we were shooting, like, I mean, Hazel's a pro, she's amazing. So she's like so talented. And I feel like she's got such a bright future, because she's just brilliant and so mature and thoughtful about everything. but yeah, and then the rest of the cast, we cast Hazel first, so kind of after that we kind of started casting everyone else. So a lot of the other cast were actually cast from self-tapes because it was during kind of the height of COVID, so we couldn't have an audition or meet people in person. So a lot of it was self-tapes and then Zooming with actors, trying to get a sense of them and what they were interested in. And then luckily, kind of as we got closer to the shoot, we got to have a chemistry test with Hazel and Carolyn, which was really invaluable because it just showed how well they work together, and that was really kind of helpful for me to see, and just to get to meet each other as well. So then we kind of got to do a bit more rehearsal and stuff, which was great. But yeah, it was I think we were lucky as well because it was during COVID, so I think some actors, like, they had more time to do independent horror films in Ireland because there wasn't anything else shooting. Like, I think we were one of the first shoots to go back in Ireland, apart from like The Last Duel or whatever. So I think it was like we were kind of fortuitous timing in that way as well.
I think I'm almost out of time, but what do you hope people take away from it? Because like you say, like we were saying at the beginning, it kind of has these two parallel things going on, the supernatural elements, but also just having to navigate, life as a teenager, difficult kids at school, maybe your parents aren't around in the way that you want them to be. So it feels like, through that medium, you can also explore kind of quite everyday, sort of psychological issues that people have to face.
Yeah, definitely. I think, for me, the key takeaway, I suppose, is that as somebody coming of age, if you're within a family that has inherited mental illness or inherited traumas, I guess the idea is that you may not be able to break the cycle of that happening, but you can persevere and get through to a place where you can take ownership of that, and it doesn't control you can kind of take control of that, and you can, I suppose, be your own person whilst also you can never kind of shed your family. You can never, because they're part of your DNA, your blood, so you can't really ever be truly even if you really wanted to get rid of your family. But I think that you can kind of take that and confront it, but then be your own person as well and come through the other side. So yeah, but then also just like that they enjoy it as a scary movie and fun at times and keeps you on the edge of your seat and all that kind of stuff too. So that's that it delivers some a good horror movie experience as well.
And and in that sense, is that something that you love about working in that genre, that you can kind of do different things that can work on different levels? And it feels like there's a lot of female directors kind of using it as a great way to both explore the female experience, but also you can be creative. And some of the amazing striking images that you create from almost the first scene, with the baby, it's quite an unforgettable image, and then even more towards the end. So do you think there's a lot of creativity and I guess this kind of fun elements to playing in this space?
Definitely. Yeah. I think, I've been a horror fan since I can remember, and I've always loved horror movies. And I think horror movies, for me anyway, I know that elevated horror is a new word that has come about in the past few years. But I've always seen horror as a great way to kind of explore social themes or ideas or problems we have in society and do it in a way that is can reach a wide audience and is exciting and kind of thrilling as well. So to me as a filmmaker, that's really exciting because you get kind of let your imagination run wild and then also get to talk about the themes that you want to as well. But yeah, I get to also do fun stuff like make practical makeup or set people on fire and stuff like that too.
And just very quickly, can you tell us what you might work on next? Another horror, something different?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be in the horror space for sure. I have a few projects which could go next, so it's kind of you never know in this business what will happen next. So I'm just you always have to have a few things happening. But I think horror will definitely be where I'm going to be for the next foreseeable future anyway.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait for everyone to be able to see you on Not My Mother as well. Well, I think it just came out, didn't it, Friday? So thanks so much for your time. So great to speak to you. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much. Thanks a million.
Thanks. See you. Bye.